Shalom, and welcome to the Hebrew of Israel channel. We continue our journey in the scriptures with the resting of the ark. So let's begin with Genesis chapter 8, verse 1 through 5.
Chapter 8. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark, and God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. And the fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen.
Today, many people believe that the ark rested on Mount Ararat in Armenia. However, before the 13th century AD, people didn't believe Armenia was the location for the resting of Noah's Ark. It was a completely foreign concept. This only became popularized very recently in the 13th century AD. Armenians began to associate Mount Ararat in Armenia as the location of Noah's Ark. But prior to the 13th century, Mount Ararat was a pagan mountain that the gods lived on, and the sun set there. When Armenians adopted Christianity, they changed it from a pagan mountain to the resting of Noah's Ark. The reason why Mount Ararat became popular with Christians in the West is because of crusaders who came to Armenia and brought the legend back to Europe. According to the book Armenian Christianity Today, Identity Politics, and Popular Practice, it is worth noting that contrary to Armenian Apostolic Church discourse and popular knowledge, it is probably as late as the beginning of the 2nd millennium AD when the localization of the biblical Mount Ararat was permanently moved from the highlands hemming Upper Mesopotamia to Mount Massis in the heartland of historical Armenian territory. Mount Massis was a sacred mountain even before its identification with Ararat, and afterwards its symbolic importance for the Armenian issue has made Massis Ararat critical in the formation of the Armenian identity. And according to historical Genesis from Adam to Abraham, it reads, Armenia converted to Christianity in the 4th century. An alphabet was introduced by the 5th century AD, and the Bible could then be translated into Armenian. When Armenians read Genesis in their own Bible, their understanding appears to be at variance with what the writers of the Genesis intended. Once the Armenians believed the famous Ark was located within their borders, Ark stories began to flourish. Armenian literature from the 5th through the 10th centuries AD said nothing of an Ark. It was not until the 13th century that Ark legends began to appear, and these stories became popular by the 14th century. Perhaps the earliest Mount Ararat account can be attributed to William of Rumbruck, who launched a mission to the Mongols in hope of converting them to Christianity near the city he called Nukhsa. As Christianity flourished over the centuries, Mount Ararat in Turkey became the landing spot de jure without regard to how a boat could have gotten there or even paying close attention to the Genesis narrative itself. One of those caught up in repeating the myths of others was Nicolas de Nicolai, appointed by the King of France as court geographer, who by 1558 had finished a trip to Turkey. According to World History Encyclopedia titled Mount Ararat, it reads, Ancient Armenians called the mountain Ma'az Massis, which meant holy and free in the Old Armenian language. Kajus, which were guardian spirits of royal and noble families, dwelt on Mount Ararat. Pagan Armenians found it taboo to scale the mountain, as they believed, much like the Sumerians, that Mount Ararat was a place where the sun came to rest during the night. Even after their conversion to Christianity, Armenians were still reluctant to risk climbing to Mount Ararat's peak. There is nevertheless a legend that King Turdet III, Armenia's first Christian king, climbed Mount Ararat to bring down stones for the formation of the 8 new churches. Armenians have many myths and legends about the base of the Ararat Mountains, many of which predate Christianity and include dragons, snakes, and other reptile monsters. These myths and legends are strongly correlated with volcanic steam, ash, and black waters that spewed forth out of Mount Ararat during eruptions and earthquakes. Movoses Kenrotius, an Armenian historian and the author of the History of Armenia, wrote that Armenians are the direct descendants of Noah through his son Japheth, and that Hayek, the mythical founder of Armenia and ancestor to all Armenians, established his nation within the vicinity of Mount Ararat. The arrival of European crusaders and intermarriage between Armenians and European crusaders in the 11th and 12th century CE seem to have accelerated the reassertion that Mount Ararat was the spot where the Ark came to rest. When Europeans returned to continental Europe from the Holy Land, or Armenia, they reiterated that Mount Ararat, located in the heart of Armenia, was where the Ark could be found. So, as stated before, the association of Armenia with the Mount Ararat is a fairly recent concept. This wasn't believed until the 13th century AD. Then, Western Christian European crusaders came to Armenia and brought the legend to Europe. But before the 13th century AD, Mount Ararat was a sacred mountain to the Armenians in pagan belief. However, due to adopting Christianity, these pagan beliefs were changed, and they changed the mountain from a sacred mountain into the resting of Noah's Ark. So in reality, the resting of Noah's Ark is a fairly recent concept and belief held in Armenian pagan folklore that was changed in the 13th century by Christianity, and then it was brought to Western Europe by Crusaders. Now, this begs the question, where did the Ark settle? It's actually been believed for thousands of years that the Ark settled on a mountain called Mount Judi, or Kudi, or Khudi, all the same location. Mount Judi is Noah's appatriation, or place of descent, the location where the Ark came to rest after the Great Flood, according to very early Christian and Islamic tradition. The Quranic tradition is similar to the Judeo-Christian legend. The identification of Mount Judi as the landing site of the Ark persisted in Syriac and Armenian tradition throughout the late antiquity, but was abandoned for the tradition equating the biblical location with the highest mountain of the region, that is, Mount Ararat in Armenia. Jewish, Babylonian, Syriac, Islamic, and early Christian traditions identify Mount Judi, or Khodu, as a place near or northeast of the town of Jezeret Abin Aber, at the headquarters of the Tigris River, near the modern border with Syria and that of Iraq. A number of sources, including Islamic and Christian, speak of there being at least 2 settlements near the mountain, one being the ancient ruins of Thebian, located to the south of the mountain, and the other being the city of Nesbin, near the border with Syria, from where people had come to visit the Ark. Thamanian, meaning 8 in Arabic, is thought to have been founded by Noah and the survivors of the flood, who were thought to number around 80, and a tale that was thought to be the ruin of Thamanian is located east of Syriaz, one of the places that is thought to be the tomb of Noah. The Syrians of the eastern part of the Tigris River had a legend of the ark resting on the Judi mountain in the land of Khard. This legend may in origin have been independent of the Genesis account of Noah's flood, rooted in the more general Near Eastern flood legends, but following Christianization of the Syrians from the 2nd century AD, it became associated with the mountains of Ararat where Noah landed according to Genesis. And from Syria also, this legend also spread to the Armenians. The Armenians did not traditionally associate Noah's landing site with Mount Ararat, known natively as Massis, but until the 11th century continued to associate Noah's Ark with Mount Judi. According to the book Mercer Dictionary of the Bible, it reads, "Since the ancient kingdom was much more extensive than the later subdivision, Ararat, early Jews and Christians sought the Ark's landing place further to the southeast, where the mountains first rise from the plain of the river Tigris. The location of choice was an elevation now called in Turkish Kardu Daji, but known to the ancient Semitic peoples as Kardu. Hence, the Aramaic and Syriac translations of the Bible rendered Genesis chapter 8 verse 4 as the mountains of Kardu, and the Greek and Latin writers referred to the area as Gorduye. The Nestorian Christians built several monasteries on this peak, including one on the summit known as the Cloister of the Ark. The Muslims who conquered the area in the 7th century then erected a mosque on the site and referred to the area as Jabal, Mount Judi. Even in recent times, representatives of various faiths, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Sabians, and Yazidis, gathered there annually to commemorate Noah's first sacrifice after the flood had ended. And according to the book titled Genesis, it reads, "Since the ancient kingdom of Ararat/Urartu was much more extensive geographically than this isolated location in Armenia, modern attempts to find remnants of Noah's Ark here are misguided. The mountains of Ararat of Genesis chapter 8 verse 4 most likely refers to the foothills where the Mesopotamian plains in the north yield to the highlands near the sources of the Tigris and Euphrates River. A site of long tradition is Kardu, identified as the landing place in the Quran. According to the article Noah's Ark and Mount Judi, it reads, "According to Armenian and Syrian Christians living east of the Tigris River, the landing place of Noah's Ark was Mount Judi, not Ararat Mountains on the Turkish-Armenian border, widely held to be the location. Mount Judi is part of the mountain range that forms the northern border of the Mesopotamian plain. Nestorian Christians built monasteries on Mount Judi, including one on its summit called the Cloister of the Ark. According to tradition, wood from the Ark was used to build a monastery in Syriaz, on the modern Syrian border, where the so-called Tomb of Noah is located today." And according to the paper titled Locating the City of Thamian, it reads, "Although in the west, the biblical Mount Ararat came to be located with Mount Arge after the 13th century journeys of William of Rukbruck and Marco Polo. Mount Judi was the mountain associated with the Ark of the Great Flood in countless early accounts, including Babylonian, Assyrian, Jewish, early Christian, and Islamic sources. In addition to telling of the legendary Ark at this mountain's summit, many of these sources also mention a related site at its base, Thaminian, said to have been the city founded by the flood survivors. Whatever the origins of this ancient city may have been, it is a real place. Numerous ancient geographies and histories mention Thaminian. To the Romans, it was Thamianus, and their 1st century geographer Strabo tells of its capture by the Armenians from the Syrians. The Assyrians knew it as Ternanu. It was among the 7 cities that the Assyrian Emperor Sennacherib conquered when he invaded Mount Hudi circa 697 BCE. However, the bishopric of Thaminian went silent after 1265 CE, and its territory was abandoned by the city of Caesarea. By the 14th century, Thaminian was only ruins. The geographer and historian Hamdallah Mustafi described Thaminian, a village that lay at the foot of Mount Judi, and which Noah built after that he had escaped from the flood. Thus it was the first shrine that was raised on the earth's face after the deluge. It is now a ruin. Theophilus of Edessa recounts the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius' journey to Thamian in the 18th year of his reign, circa 628 CE. Heraclius returned and camped next to a certain village called Thamnian, which is the place where the ark stopped during the flood in the time of Noah. He climbed the mountain called Al-Judi, examined the place of the ark, and surveyed the world to the 4 horizons. Then he headed for Amid. Taken together, this provides a specific guide. Thamnian was located on the plain at the southern foot of Mount Hudi, directly below the traditional ark site, on a stream, and roughly equidistant from Karez and Zacho, a day's walk from each. The local geography allows us to narrow the location further, that the survivors were said to have walked down the mountain slope and there built a city, suggests that Thamnian was to be found near the terminus of the southern descent of the mountain. And according to the paper titled The Search for Noah's Ark, it reads, 2 major traditions exist for the location of the ark. The European tradition, accepted by most Western Christians today, placed the ark on Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey, along the Araxes River near the border of the former USSR country of Armenia. However, that particular mountain is called Mount Massis by the Armenians and Agiri Daj by the Turks. Many Armenian historians discount modern Mount Ararat as being the traditional landing place of the ark. It has been the notion among many Christians that Noah's Ark came to rest as the flood subsided upon the great peak known as Mount Ararat. This assumption is based on an erroneous reading of the 4th verse of chapter 8 of Genesis. That verse does not say that the ark landed upon Mount Ararat, but upon the mountains of Ararat. As Kurjan noted, the Bible does not address the exact location of the ark, stating only that the ark came to rest in the mountains of Ararat, Genesis chapter 8 verse 4. However, some Jewish commentators do address the point more specifically. Cyrilius points out a remarkable fact that the Chaldean or Targum version of the Bible, called that of Unclesius, reads Mount Kardu for Ararat, and another Targum called that of Jonthanius reads by misspelling Kardum mountains. About the same time that George Elmison was writing, William of Rubric wrote The Journey of William Rubric to the eastern parts of the world. He did not see the ark himself, but describes an Armenian tradition placing the ark atop Mount Massis near the Araxes River. he further relates the story of a monk who attempted to scale the mountain, but was unable to finish. An angel of the Lord brought him a piece of the ark and told him to attempt no more. His story of the monk is very similar to a story written by Faustus of Byzantium in the 4th century AD, 900 years prior, but who placed the incident further to the south in the Gordanian Mountains. This 13th century AD account appears to be the first reference to place the ark on the mountain that today is called Mount Ararat. All prior accounts placed the ark further south. By the end of the 13th century, it would seem that the tradition of Mount Massis being Mount Ararat had become firmly entrenched. All of the remaining authors cited by Montgomery follow this tradition. They include Jordanius 1329 through 1338 AD, Odoric of Pordenum circa 1330 AD, Francesco Pigolatti circa 1340 AD, Sir John Mandeville circa 1360 AD, Gonzalez de Calvillo 1412 AD, Adam O'Learius 1662 AD, Jens Zuns Strunis 1677 AD, Sir John Chardin 1684 AD. All of these authors are reporting traditions of the people living around Erdegag at the time. None claim to have seen the ark themselves. Various ancient sources also state that Noah's Ark rested in Mount Judi and not Mount Ararat in Armenia. Sources such as the Samaritan Pentateuch, the Targums, the Book of Jubilees, Josephus, Julius Africanus, Eusebius, the Peshitta, and Apophthegms. All of these sources and more place Noah's Ark, the resting of it, in Mount Judi, near Syria and Iraq, and not Mount Ararat in Armenia. And again, this is according to Jewish Babylonian, Syriac, early Christians and Muslims, even the Armenians themselves, before the 13th century AD, said that Mount Judi was the location of the resting of Noah's Ark. Remember, the Armenian legend of Noah's Ark only goes back to the 13th century AD, when Armenians converted to Christianity. But prior to Christianity, Mount Massis was sacred to the Armenians for pagan reasons. Keep in mind, it was only changed until after Christianity that they changed it from a pagan mountain to the resting of Noah's Ark. And then this legend was brought to Europe by crusaders who went into Armenia and brought the tradition with them to the west, and then it became popularized. Therefore, Mount Ararat being in Armenia today is really a late Christian belief or a medieval Christian belief, and it's not an old Christian belief, because early Christians, as well as Jewish people and Muslims, all believed that Mount Judi was the location of where Noah's Ark rested, which is near Syria and Iraq today. And I choose to go with the older sources that say Noah's Ark rested in Mount Judi rather than late medieval Christian beliefs. I go with the early Christian beliefs, the Babylonian Jewish beliefs, the Syriac beliefs, and the Islamic belief for the resting of Noah's Ark in Mount Judi. And with that being said, have a blessed day and shalom.